All right, here's my path, which is 21st century ministry models, how to reach the next generation in a postmodern culture when the church is on the decline in the Western world. Gen Z being the age of 25 and under, postmodern being the current cultural climate in the West that there is no truth. So the problem is, how do we engage the next generation who are irreligious or aren't concerned about religious matters and don't believe in truth in general? You might ask why we need to do this to reach millennials or Gen Z specifically. Is 90% of conversions occur before the age of 30, and the church is on a rapid decline in the Western world. And without a strong church in the West, we'll see civilization decline and a lot of lost and hopeless young people. So one of the things I'm gonna do a lot of research on are what are the values and then the metrics for Gen Z living in a postmodern culture. Some of the things that I've noticed that I want to study is social justice in the next generation, their desire for authenticity and community. We've seen diversity, inclusion in this generation like never before, where it's definitely a core value of theirs. And then we live in the information age where self-expression is a part of life with social media and Instagram. I want to look at some of the obstacles with some of the older generations, just religion in general, institutional church. I think there's a different idea of commitment today and what you're committed to. Kids today aren't growing up with just biblical morality in general, which can be good and bad. And so just the other cultural barriers that exist, and also what COVID-19 has done to the next generation. And I want to see how that affects ministry models. I think some of our traditional models conflict with the core values of the next generation. I think the CEO model of church is hard with a top-heavy, domineering type leadership, which maybe isn't even biblical, with Jesus calling us to servant leadership. It's led to a dry church with a lack of diversity, where it seems like political affiliation has become more important than social justice. And I think there's a professional ministry model that might be off-putting to the next generation. And so I want to look at just some other models that maybe will be easier for the next generation to engage in, things that are organic. Maybe that's house churches, maybe it's church planting, meeting in neutral locations and buildings like movie theaters, schools and coffee shops. I want to look at the ministry of the saints of just not having all professional paid staff, but a church of volunteers and people who own the mission of God. And then what community needs to look like for the next generation. I think God's kingdom can tell us a lot about social justice and how we can implement that. And then also, I think the next generation is more concerned about music and the arts than traditional evangelical churches. And then through all of this, it would be neat to have a plan and protocol for ministers that anyone could read or benefit from, whether it's starting a new church or trying to adjust your current church to reach the next generation. So we know the mission is the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, and the kingdom of God, and how can we fulfill that mission? And my vision would be to raise up the next generation, which I think every parachurch church needs to be looking into, so we don't die of old age. And then what's the best strategy for the church and parachurch? In that, still don't quite know what their core values are or what the metrics are, but I want to study that in greater detail. So here's the map at a whole.